Hey everybody, welcome to the Mr. Teacher, Mr. Preacher podcast and YouTube channel. I am the teacher, Kevin Vota. That is Jake Train. He is the preacher. And we are in our series on John Wooden's Pyramid of Success, the loyalty building block, loyalty episode number 2 out of 4. And it is our job with all of these building blocks, these themes, these virtues, values, whatever you'd like to call them, to learn what lasts in athletics and teach and preach them back to you. The athlete, the coach, the parent, the whatever you are in the context of the greater sporting world. Welcome on in. That's what we're up to. Like we said, we're on our second episode. This one is on Todd Herman's The Alter Ego Effect, the Power of Secret Identities to Transform Your Life. So in John Wooden's vernacular, as the pyramid sitting right in front of me, we're looking at these first 2 episodes of how to be true to yourself in that Shakespearean sense of the word. Last episode, we covered the power of character strengths from the Via Character Institute. Looked at Jake and myself's signature strengths. Those are the top 5 out of 24. This week, we're going to finish off that true to yourself with building an alter ego for Jake for one context of his life. And then we'll move on in the coming episodes about being true to those you lead. And we'll get to that. Jake, how we doing? You ready to roll with another one?
Yeah, we're doing good. I'm ready to get number 2 rolling here on loyalty.
Loyalty. All right. Now, let's start with this. So I want to throw our readers in with this concept of intentional versus accidental. And I want to build you some background. So breeze through this with me. And this is a good place to start before we get into the alter ego effect. And this is one of the things that Todd preaches throughout the book that before we get into it, I want to really cover. On page 34, at least in the beginning of the book, Todd says, when you become more intentional about what characteristics will show up on the important field of play for you, you'll activate creative energy, powering a new level of performance. So that is the quote. And I want to actually give 2 examples for people to understand what I mean by that accidental versus intentional. An athlete example and a parent example. And I don't even need to pull up the book because this is pretty easy. So the first one is an athlete. And this particular athlete was struggling where she would get ahead in her tennis matches, and then she would allow her opponent to crawl back and sometimes even win. And Todd really struggled with what was it about it, this particular person. Coaching isn't always cut and dry, black and white in that context. So he couldn't figure it out. And the punchline was he figured it out over a BLT sandwich. And she tried to pay. Well, and he's like, no. Like, if I invite you, I'm the one who pays. And she's like, no. You paid last time. The point is that she valued fairness. That was one of probably her signature strengths, I would bet. And what ended up happening in her field of play, so the tennis matches, is she didn't think it was fair to stomp her opponent out, right? She wanted to be able to, be nice to them, so she was trying to be the decision maker for what was fair in a tennis match. All right. So she was accidentally showing up with this concept of fairness. And they worked all through that. And she was actually robbing them of a learning experience of like how good they actually were. So they solved that. But that was an accidental showing up versus intentional showing up. This other one was a colonel in the Army. I believe the Army or Navy SEALs, the military, okay? He comes up to Todd Herman after the speech, very grateful, very thankful. And this one I do want to pull up because it's powerful to see the intention in one arena, but the lack of intention in another. The quote is, "This uniform isn't helping me." And what he's talking about is the military garb, right? And the military means something. He loves wearing it, right? It means I have to be tough, challenging, and strong. We talk about honor code and the chain of command all the time. But here's the punchline. But I realize it's been hurting my kids. Every day I get home and the kids want to spend time with me, and I immediately start grilling them about homework and chores. Even after I get changed out of my uniform, I'm still the same person. I've been racking my brain for the past 20 minutes trying to figure out how to apply what you talked about. And as he goes down, he says, where on the base, at least the military base, or anywhere else for that matter, do you go and get your dad uniform on? Where's the handbook about the history, story, and credo of what it means to join the brotherhood of fatherhood? When you go home and change out of your uniform, do your jeans and golf shirt mean anything to you? Probably not. So we have an athlete example, Jake. Okay, somebody shows up accidentally. We have a father who is taking, certain attributes which are very good in one arena, and they don't apply to another. So preach to me about this idea of accidental or intentional, just in general, or maybe in your own arena where you've seen this happen.
Well, I think the accidental story is fascinating. She was losing because of her subconscious mind.
Yeah.
I mean, just if you're a coach, if you're a parent, if you're a fan, okay, that to me is mind blowing. Like when you start thinking about it, that there was a switch happening that she was not controlling, that was directly affecting the outcomes of her matches. We often, we got to control what's in our control. We often maybe don't even know what's fully in our control because we just have little in our control in general. And there she was, thinking she was in control, doing everything that she thought she could, and her own mind, without telling her, was naturally coming out and preventing her from winning. That's incredibly interesting to me as a former athlete, of what ramifications that could be. And then also as a coach I was like, that kid just doesn't get it, right? We've all been there. I've explained it 17 different ways. This kid just isn't getting it. What the heck is going on? There's something wrong with me. Am I broken? And it could be something that they just aren't even in control of, that's preventing them from understanding it or doing it. Not even understanding it, really, truly doing it. So that whole story, I think is super fascinating. I think there's a can of worms there that could go on for days. It certainly is going to change the way I view teams, right? Because it could be a collective mind subconsciously that happens. I'm a big Minnesota United fan. They're having a heck of a time closing out games these days. So I'm wondering if there's something in their collective conscious mind that is trying to make things fair. Or I mean, we've always talked about that X factor, that it factor, the nastiness, or that like specific competitive edge. But maybe the way we need to start talking about it is like their subconscious mind just isn't getting in the way of them winning. I think oftentimes we think it is a very like front of mind. Oh, they get scared of the moment. That may not be the case. Truly, it may be something that's out of their control that's triggering them to almost give it up.
I would agree. And you seamlessly made this transition from individual intention to group intention, which I think is fascinating as well. So let's to sit on that for a second. Is I wonder, so I'm leading with a little bit of curiosity. So in your first example, if something's not working, digging another layer or 2 or 3 deep. There's an example in the book that a particular player didn't respond to a coach that yelled because he had an alcoholic father that yelled at him all the time. So it didn't bring out his best when it did it to others. And that's where Wooden was brilliant, because each player needed their own thing. Like what one player needs is not what another player needs. But to your group intention, that fascinates me, because what does it mean to be, what is the mascot for the United?
The Loons.
The Loons. Okay. Is there when you sign on a contract or get traded to the Loons or the United, I'll just use the United because it sounds cooler. Although the Loon logo, for the record, is top notch. Great color scheme. Do you know when you put that jersey on, just like this Army colonel, what that means? Like, is that taught like at any level? So, I mean, I know like in some speeches, like here's what it means to be a Cardinal or a Diamondback. I mean, sometimes, but again, we're talking about accidental versus intentional. So when you put that jersey on, what does that mean? Like individually, collectively, statewide? So like you represent the state here at this point. You're United Soccer. Like you have the entire fan base behind you. And I need you to show up not only individually with your best traits, but collectively, we don't give up. We lay the axe down. I don't know what our metaphors or imagery is, but one day, Jake, maybe down the road, we'll get to the All Blacks book, New Zealand All Blacks, the legacy book. They show up intentionally. There is a brand there. And so I agree with this, that the lack of intention and just hoping that when you get to that fourth quarter or that final period, those last 15 minutes, that it's going to just be there is foolish.
But that's but that's what I think I find so fascinating is there's that outward intentional branding, that outward intentional culture. Row the boat if you're PJ Fleck, the All Blacks. Okay, we see those things come out, but I think what's I've never thought about is there is like this subconscious mind that I think true cultures of success click into. I've never really thought about. That goes far beyond the slogans, far beyond the logos and the imagery. Something that's connecting with those people on a very deeper level, right? And I think for both of us as people who have always enjoyed assembling teams and trying to figure out what works, I think is what's really drawing us, what would really draw us to this is something is happening far beyond the logos and the hoorah and just saying things, where this collective mind is coming together into who those people truly are, right? Or bringing out those attributes that the culture wants them to, all the way down to their subconscious mind.
Yep. And I think there should be a fit there. I think that's why, as much as I hate to say it, as of 2023, as we record this, if you are listening to this in the future, you can laugh at us at some point. Well, I'm so fascinated with the Detroit Lions. They have a defined culture, and they're picking players that based on that culture. So your brand and your culture becomes a filter for who shows up there. Now, it's not perfect fit, and you can't always know, but they're trying to make decisions based on this persona that they've created as a management team and a coaching staff. And those two are aligned. And so even at a broader team building level, now that we're going to, that there is that cohesion and alignment between management and staff down to players and all together. And that's interesting.
So okay, let's take, sorry if I'm jumping too far ahead of this whole collective team thing.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to, but let's take, we're both Minnesota boys. Let's take Minnesota sports. The Minnesota sports scene outside of the Minnesota Lynx have notoriously for decades. Okay. This isn't a little time for this, decades, right? Have been known for choking away in the most absurd ways. Right? Like there is just this limit to how much success a Minnesota sports franchise can have. Okay. And this goes all the way back. You talk about culture and stuff and the Lions and whatnot. This is what's fascinating me is there has been some immense talent that's come through Minnesota sports. But then I go back to the 70s, right? 70s. You have the Purple People Eaters. You have Bud Grant. Okay, think of that culture. Think of who those people were, right? Those weren't just super talented patsies. They were hard-nosed, tough human beings. Never were able to make it all the way, right? Always found a way to come up short. Minnesota sports, always finding a way to come up short, right? What is the slogan for Minnesota people? They are...
Ooh. I mean, you're asking me?
I'm putting you on the spot here. What are Minnesota people notorious for? What's the slogan that they have?
Minnesota mediocrity. I mean, that's what I mean,
is it mediocre common man? No, how the rest of, just say, the United States. If you went down south, I'm yeah, I'm from Minnesota. That's
Minnesota nice.
Minnesota nice.
Yep.
There is this collective subconscious mind that I would call it. And it's called Minnesota nice. We are just generally collectively nice. Now we are passive aggressive, so it appears nice, but we are generally very nice people, right? Maybe more so than the rest of the country. So is there something in that subconscious mind of ours that makes us that way, that also contributes to the culture of sports teams that are here.
It has to. I mean, to suggest that it doesn't, I mean, we'd have to go, we'd have to have a counter example, maybe somewhere far different, that would go through there, and understand that, if we would give another team's example and they had been winning, there might be toxic traits that came with that would bleed over, that wouldn't be as positive. So, you have to take the good with the bad. So we understand this. So yes, we're really nice. That's positive. No, we don't win. That's negative. So I think that's a really good transition to this, because that's what the alter ego effect is about, is uncovering, at least at the core belief layer, the core driver layer, what is underneath there in that ordinary world. And I'm using some of the terms from the book preemptively, that is limiting us in our ordinary from being extraordinary, from being in our trap self to our heroic self. And I would suggest in the Minnesota Nice, that's our trap self. We're trapping in, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and So I see a lot of this parallel. We're just taking that, we're going to go down to the individual level, but we're looking at a macro level, and that is worth looking at, at scale. So I would wager, if you're going to take anything from this intro, is look at that at all those levels. Does your player that you love, does your team, does your state, how do they show up? Is there intention there? And is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What is good and bad about this, about showing up intentionally versus accidentally? All right, Jake. So alter ego effect. So we're going to move to our first draft reading, and this is just comprehension. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to build you the picture of the alter ego effect, just some excerpts about what an alter ego effect is. Then I'm going to quiz you. So we got a little puzzle the preacher, but we don't have any survey today. I'm going to give you the athlete, and you are going to try and give me their alter ego. And I'll help you if you don't know. I only have 6 that were mentioned in the book. I didn't do any too crazy ones, athlete or entertainer. And then what I will go through is just a brief overview of some common terms that were used in the book, just so we're all on the same page. I'm not Todd Herman. This is going to be a lot more amateurish. He's obviously developed this system, knows it very well. We will play Todd Herman today. I will play him to Jake, and we'll build the alter ego in the second draft. But before that, get the book. So Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman. He has a great website, lots of resources on there. We'll put those in the description. We also recommend bookshop.org. That's one of our affiliates to support the channel, support the author. Bookshop.org is that independent bookseller where you can get your book through all the small bookstores across the United States. So you can know that where your money goes is to those underdogs of the book world at bookshop.org. So great place to get your book. If you like what you hear, anywhere else books are sold, but get the book. Reading is absolutely where it's at, and that's where we are going to go. So bookshop.org. Jake, alter ego effect, and interject at any point with questions or anything like that. Here's some things that Todd says throughout the book about what an alter ego is, and in his words. The alter ego effect. So the book in general was built to support ambitious people, that's you, coaches, athletes, parents, doing hard things to help you be more resilient, creative, optimistic, and courageous. The alter ego is a tool anyone in any situation, in any profession, in any moment can use to bring forth their heroic self. Couple more. Another thing is this is a very natural process. So it's a natural process of being human. And I quote, has been used for tens of thousands of people to achieve goals both big and small, and is the most real you could be. It will unlock hidden capabilities you didn't know were there. That is one thing that gets brought up a lot. This is not faking it or pretending it. It's actually unlocking what is already there and bringing that forth. So Todd does a good job about that this is your heroic self is actually the real you, and it's just lying dormant within inside of you. Keep going is is it's about unlocking this heroic self. So we are going to look at how can you or I help ambitious people take the capabilities already nested inside them. So last episode in the Power of Character Strengths, we looked at what are Jake's signature strengths, his top things. So those things that are already there, it's not that they're not there, they're there. And how can we use those to perform at peak levels consistently? That's kind of the biggest question of the book. Moving forward, almost there. An alter ego is a useful tool to help you, me, and others handle the adversity of life with more resiliency. It allows us to be more intentional about who we're trying to be on the field of play. So if you're an athlete, it is literally the field. If it's a coach, it's the coaching. If it's parenting, it's whenever that occurs, whichever field you want to choose. In terms of an alter ego, this went way back to even the Roman statesman Cicero. This was a good true-false question. And it's defined as a second self, a trusted friend. In Latin, it means the other I. Two more, and then we'll call it good. As I jump through the core self, where we're looking into our alter ego, is where possibility exists. This is our intrinsic motivation. So your alter ego is the deepest parts of you where you are going to be your most heroic. Last one. You may see yourself, I quote, as someone who's a kind, nice person. Those are great qualities, just like that tennis player. However, on the field of play, people may take advantage of that kindness and help heap more work on you than is fair, or use it to negotiate terms. So instead, Todd, or we, are asking you to be more intentional about who needs to show up on the field of play. This isn't about dishonoring who you are. This is about really looking at the characteristics that will help you succeed in bringing that part of your life, that part of you to life with the help of an alter ego. So why we do this is because it's fun, it's easy, you naturally already really good at it, and it's fun to play a character. So everybody is the hero of their own story, as Jane McGonigal said, and this is the process of how to become that hero. So Jake, any thoughts on just alter ego in general, being your heroic self, what you think of alter egos in general?
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating idea. I think we've touched on it like a little bit briefly. We've talked about just being the person that you want to be instead of wishing or hoping, but you just go out and be them.
Yeah.
So I think we've touched on it. So it'd be good to go in a little more depth on this too. And you know, I have to mention that like this whole thing it reminds me of the study that was done on just standing in a superhero pose. Yep. Right, like standing in that person that you want to be, that like confident pose that actually boosts your self-confidence, and an assortment of things is what it made me think of. So yeah, I'm excited to go a little bit deeper into this because I think we have some background in it already, and that will add to what we get into.
I think that was Amy Cuddy's research, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but somebody can fact check us. And she had a really cool TED Talk. But I remember the superhero pose thing. So that was not mentioned in this book. It might have came out at the same time. I don't remember the publication date here. All right, so we have a good idea. We're going to build this persona, this heroic self. Let's get some examples of this. So I'm going to throw a person out at Jake, and let's see if he can connect it to the alter ego. Now, if he can't get it, because I'm not giving him any clues of like, I'm not giving him multiple choice. So I'm going to kind of be filling the blank here. Let's get some examples of this, because Todd does a good job of showing people throughout history and sports and in other arenas who have done this. Some have done it accidentally, as a couple of these people have, and other people have deliberately designed it, as Todd did and others. So let's start off at the bottom, and I'll work my way up, at least on my list. And let's see. The first one is Dwayne Johnson. What is Dwayne Johnson's alter ego?
The Rock.
The Rock. That was pretty easy. So we have this character, and he obviously started that in WWE, or whatever it was called at the time, WWF. And he transferred that over to his acting career and his brand and all the clothing and so forth. And that stands for its own thing, him, essentially at his very best.
You know, side note, it'd be interesting to go through, sorry to interrupt you, to go through those guys, because they come up, they'll use different identities, right? They'll use different
Oh, yeah.
alter egos before one will stick, and then they blow up. And I'd be curious to know, just talking, especially with the guys that made it, like what was it about the ego that they hit on that they think contributed to them blowing up?
I think I have an answer later to that, at least one
Okay.
possible from the book. I don't have a specific answer, but I do have one that Todd keeps going. There was one repetitive thing over and over. I'll save that. I think there is one. You're right, though. There is something that it's almost like going down a buffet of different pieces of you. And I think when you get the right traits, right story, right emotion at the right time, then it goes. Like, so I'll save that. Kobe's alter ego is
The Black Mamba.
Yeah, that one is featured. How he actually chose it was interesting as a idea of that. It was he's a deadly assassin. So it's like a code name or code word for a deadly assassin. He delved into the Black Mamba in general, like the actual snake. But he chose it specifically for the being an assassin type concept in that word. All right, moving to the music world, Jake. Our first music example, you might not get this one, but I'll be impressed if you do, is David Bowie, who's actually, that name is actually an alter ego in itself because it was David Jones, I think. Davy Jones? That's Pirates of the Caribbean. David Jones. What was David Bowie's one of his alter egos? Do you know?
I don't.
If I tell you the first one starts with a Z, would that help you at all? First name starts with Z.
No, I don't think so.
That's all right. I didn't know it either. Ziggy Stardust. So he developed an alter ego on top of an alter ego to perform at his best because he had quite the backstory that was not all positive. All right. He finally got you on one. Let's do another easy one. Jerome Bettis.
The Bus.
Very good. Now, I'll admit, as much as I love fullbacks, I didn't really like having Jerome Bettis on my Madden teams in the day. I did not. I mean, I should have. He just trucked people. He was the original truck button. That was just his character. He trucked people.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, okay. Side note, tangent. I can't resist asking Jake. Jake, will there ever be another Jerome Bettis in the NFL?
I'm just trying to think of the closest thing to it. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes because the NFL has moved to this whole running back by committee bit. And so I'm guessing it's only a matter of time before someone just starts implementing a strictly goal line 4th and 1 back who's, just a massive human being, and his job is his stat line will be 3 carries for 1 yard and 2 touchdowns. I could see it, that context. I could see it happening. Otherwise, I would probably tell you no. But
what we need, Jake, is, and I'm testing people's knowledge of the NFL at this point. Do you remember who used to hand off to was it the Buccaneers handed off to Warren Sapp? No, this is the refrigerator Perry. We need to bring back the fridge. So we need the Buccaneers current day to hand off to Vita Vea, to Aaron Donald. We need defensive tackle, goal line handoff. I mean, who in the world is going to stop Aaron Donald? And now he is an exact comparison to Jerome Bettis. But who's going to stop Aaron Donald from scoring? Or Vita Vea? Or name your interior lineman of choice? Nobody is the answer.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I'd like to see some teams bring it back. Maybe not with their stud defensive tackle because, you want to protect his knees and his general body and stuff. But at the very least, just find the biggest dude on your team and hand him the football and say, go, dude. I don't understand why more teams don't do that. When they say heavy package, literally put the heaviest human beings you have on your team in the backfield, one as a lead blocker and one as a running back, and go for it.
One day, Jake, and see, this is why people should like and subscribe, is because our at least 80s, 90s, 2000s football knowledge is top notch. We need Tony Siragusa to take the ball into the end zone
So that was the first thing when you said that. I mean, I know it was the refrigerator Perry bit, but then I was like, I wonder if Saragusa ever got a carry, because he absolutely should have. That would have been great television. Great television. But yeah, we gotta get the heavy eaters in there, giving them the football and letting them run a little bit. I think they'd all appreciate it.
Yeah, forget passing. Just let them keep moving forward. And then you need like imagine like Kirk Cousins pushing a Siragusa from behind. That would be so funny. I know I'm mixing players and teams. I don't care.
Or even like the Eagles have their own new QB sneak kind of formation where they have two guys pushing Hurts. But why have the running back do that? Why not just pull in your 6th, 7th, and 8th offensive lineman and just pick the dude up and chuck him over the line or something?
What is
does that play illegal?
What was the what is the formation that was the running formation that was really popular for a little bit?
Oh, the power T, the wishbone.
No, it wasn't that one.
What does it look like?
I don't remember. It was like, remember the RPO, and we had like you had the running back. It was the one, the running back would be the quarterback. What was that called?
An option? Like the triple option?
No. It's
Wildcat.
Wildcat. We need the Wildcat versus who wants to put Jalen Hurts at $50 million a year QB sneaking? He's going to get hurt, people. So we need the heavy package. We need the heavy Wildcat. The Wildcat's too lean. We need like the Bearcat formation. Like save the QBs.
Imagine Saragusa getting under center. I'm just gonna say the commentary. Well, no, would his arms be long enough, like between the center's butt and his stomach, like to get there and say hut hike and get the snap? I don't know.
But I'm getting far off base. This needs to happen. Somebody needs to put this formation into Madden and tell us your success rate on goal line plays of 3 yards and under. There's no way you can't have positive yardage at this point.
See, but man is stupid and won't let you put in a defensive tackle at the quarterback position. Trust me, I've tried.
Okay. Well, coaches, make it happen. Last two alter egos.
Tony Saragusa's alter ego is Tom Brady.
Yes, he's pretty. Next one is Beyonce. Do you know Beyonce's alter ego? It was the name of one of her albums. I Am This.
Sasha Fierce.
That is correct, Sasha Fierce. She was actually grew up singing in a church, and she struggled with performing, I will say, not as church-like material. And she needed so she was very trapped by that, and she was able to create another ego where she was able to free that. Last one. This one you might not get. This was an accidental alter ego, is Bo Jackson, who met Todd Herman before we went on stage and said Bo Jackson never played a down of football ever. It was his alter ego. So do you know it, first off? And if you don't, I'll give you a clue.
I don't. I feel like I've heard it before.
Okay. Well, Bo Jackson was a very emotional, hot-headed player pre-alter ego. So he picked the most emotionless, cold-blooded serial killer from a 80s horror film who wore a mask.
Jason.
Yes. So before Bo Jackson went on the field, he became Jason. And that is how he was unstoppable, all the traits of Jason on a football field, and that allowed him to keep his emotions in check and also be devastating. If you ever watch Bo Jackson highlights. So that is really it. So you have these examples from The Rock.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you, but it reminded me of one more who has been in the news quite a bit lately. And when you say Bo Jackson, it makes me think of this person, Deion Sanders.
Coach Prime.
Exactly. Prime time. I would consider that an alter ego. He's Deion, and then he switches to Prime time.
We have time. So we have all the time. This is what people view for. Are there any other cases of alter egos that you're aware of? And these are just ones from the book. So Deion was a good one. I didn't actually plan or think of any beyond the book. Any that you have perceived, or maybe an athlete that could use a persona, or any alter egos in that concept? Any come to mind?
LeBron, I would say King James is an alter ego. I'd say Karl Anthony Towns needs an alter ego because he's struggling to find his like identity with all of the things and stuff going on. Let's see, other sports.
Baseball, football.
You know who needed an alter ego? Joe Mauer. Talk about too nice of a guy whose subconscious probably held him back. Joe Mauer. I'd be interested in Tom Brady. I feel like Tom probably has one, but I've never heard it before.
Sometimes it appears from the outside looking in that, like, let me give you another quarterback, like Patrick Mahomes or a Travis Kelce or a Jason Kelce or a Rob Gronkowski. We mentioned some of these players in previous episodes where they're just themselves and they're already a persona and their stories fit pretty seamlessly. And so when I hear some people, they're just naturally unlocked, maybe because of the position, like they've hit already the lotto on a couple of these, they're the right position, they're the right personality, they've been rewarded for that personality, and then that blossoms. And I think other times people are the wrong puzzle piece in the wrong situation, and then they need to bring and morph those particular aspects to that particular thing. That is interesting. I would love to deconstruct a cat. He needs to hire Todd Herman. Todd Herman needs to work with all Minnesota teams. We need a new persona. We need a statewide intervention, Todd Herman. Come to Minnesota and do all the sports together. We need each of these sports to be tough as nails. We're going to be Minnesota nice no more.
Yeah, right. Another name I'm going to throw out to you, see what your thoughts is, Tim Tebow.
Does he have a persona? Are you asking if he has an alter ego?
Yeah, I'm asking. What do you think?
I don't think he does. I think he's Tim Tebow. I think he's. I don't know. I think he has a very grounded in a lot of these principles that we're about to do. I don't think he deliberately brings forth a different Tim Tebow. I think he's just maybe. I mean, like as a person, he's one way because he has his values and belief systems. On the field, he was ruthless. I mean, if you look at his college days, I mean, we can debate about his NFL days all we want, but as a college player, I mean, he was a game wrecker. And there's videos of him bloody. He had a motor. I would love to know that because what do you think? I maybe.
I think it's a very curious case because have you watched the Florida documentary on Netflix by chance?
No, not yet.
So super recommend it. But what's fascinating is Tim's at a major university. He is a superstar at that university, right? And there's a lot of things that come with it. That's free drinks, that's partying, that's girls, all of the stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Of which other guys were getting into, no questions asked. This is incredible being a D1 athlete, but they noted, Tim never went to parties with us. Tim never went out with us, right? Mm-hmm. Tim was, in that sense, unbelievably unrelatable for them. Yeah. Like they just couldn't connect with him. But as soon as someone handed them a football, Tim was the most relatable human being on planet Earth for them. Like all of a sudden, their perception of him changed, right? All of a sudden, he became this just fierce workout beast, animal, like guy had just no inhibitions all of a sudden once football happened. That's what made me think of it. And specifically, hearing those guys' stories about Tim Tebow and how their perception of him changed when there were pads and when there weren't pads. Right. It's not they didn't like him off the field. They just were completely different. And there was no relating. There wasn't going out on Friday night and partying together. Like none of that. So completely separate there. But all of a sudden, boom, football happens. Like, yeah, dude, this is my brother. This guy is insane. I will go to war with this guy. That's what made me think of it.
We'll see. We're gonna have to come back to the Tebow thing and the, collective alter ego concept. To transition. So that is the beginning. So yes, we have accidental, intentional. We have this idea of an alter ego. Some terms you need to know, and I'm not going to define them verbatim for time's sake, but as we use these, it'll help you deconstruct these as you go forth. And that's why you buy a book, so you don't have to remember them off the top of your head, or at least verbally. So the alter ego is really about defining how you want to show up, your superpowers, you're borrowing your characteristics of an existing person, character, superhero, or animal, or whatever to help activate your heroic self. You get to define who shows up on your field of play. All right. So some things that you need to know just very quickly is the trap self. So that's yourself that's not showing up intentionally. That's usually the one that is defeated and it falls prey to the enemy. You at your ordinary, you're at your mediocrity. You are Minnesota sports. Don't do that. Your heroic self is when you are intentional and you're going to bring forth those superpowers and those traits that bring out your very best. It's your signature strengths dialed up to 10, or whichever ones you choose at their fullest, which of course other people need. And that is what I would suggest is when you are your most loyal to yourself. Then we have these moments of impact in your field of play. And that is very simply is just like that particular context. And Todd goes into his own definitions of said things, those critical moments that define a large part of your success in your fields of players, like where the action actually happens. It's where you actually play, it's where you perform. You have your core self. He has this really interesting, visual that comes up, and you can check it out. We aren't going to go into it for our sake, but he has these different layers of like your field of play. So, we have the core self. Imagine like an onion. So we have this big sphere, and the very inside we have your core self. Your true possibility. We have your core drivers, so the things that move you, there are common core drivers that people have. Moving on, we have like layer 2, which is kind of that belief layer, how you define yourself in the world around you. The layer on top of that is the actions you take because of those beliefs underneath those core drivers. And then that 4th layer, so you imagine your onion again, we have that action layer, which is like what's actually happening in the physical environment, the people, places, things, and their expectations. So it's really an interesting model that he uses to unpack. So this field of play model that he goes through. In addition to that, we have things like the ordinary world versus extraordinary world. That would work with your trap self and your heroic self synonymously. We have the enemy. So every hero has an enemy. Sometimes it's seen, sometimes it's unseen. This layers into all of the narrative type coaching. Also like Stephen Pressfield, and he calls the enemy the resistance. Jane calls them bad guys, lots of different ways, but any good story has an opponent, an antagonist. And that is what we have here too. There are common forces that stop us from achieving or manifesting, whatever word you want, that hold us back from achieving our goals. And he gives a list of those. And that's really kind of the breadth of what it means to start to build an alter ego. So we have some of these terms. We're going to develop this person. There's different layers to it. And each of these are very nuanced. Now, to transition, we are going to, in our second draft reading, this is the meat of the episode, beyond Tony Siragusa tangents, build an alter ego for Jake. Now, he's going to be as transparent as he is willing. I'm going to leave out some of the coaching. I'm not Todd Herman. I'm not going to pretend to be. I'm going to do some amateur alter ego development through some of the bigger pieces here. So our job today is we're going to build an alter ego for Jake. And I will walk him through what I consider the more chronological aspect. So if you would like to follow along, you could do this no matter what field of play or moment of impact you choose. So I'm going to take him through, here's the order, his field of play. He's going to pick, what are we going to build an alter ego for? Todd suggests just doing one, the most important one. We'll talk about those questions. We're going to do what you want and don't want. So what do you want to do? So the goals. What do you, or maybe what don't you want out of this scenario? We're going to play Pink Floyd, which is the whys in the wall. So we're going to look at, kind of digging deeper. Why do we want this? We'll look at either superpowers or the alter ego. Sometimes one comes before the other. There's no wrong answer, but you can have a name for your alter ego first and then develop your superpowers, or vice versa. Like, I want to be this, this, this. What character or thing, embodies that? We'll walk through his core drivers. What is this character, this alter ego of Jake's for or against? Could be one or the other or both. We'll identify maybe a presumed enemy or hidden force that he is fighting. We will develop a totem or a physical object that he can have his phone booth moment or activation. So when he takes that thing and then he becomes that character. And then if we have time, we're going to go to the observer or immersion concept where he gets actually answer as his alter ego. We'll wrap up with some metaphors really quick and most valuable ideas for our audience. And then I have some tic-tac fun at the end, tic-tacs in coffee shops, which is super fun. Jake, any questions before we start?
Should I be worried about this?
I don't think so. Not at all. I think it'll be, you're super playful and humorous. So this will be a good process for our audience. So developing an alter ego on the fly is what we should be doing here. So let's start at the beginning. Field of play. So Jake, you get a pick. What we are looking for is what field of play or moment of impact do you want to develop an alter ego for? So let me give you an example. Some examples. A personal life or your professional life would probably be the first spot. Is this one as an athlete, as a coach, in the business world, or as a parent? What would be your field of play that you want a alter ego for?
Let's go coach.
Okay. So Jake as a coach. All right. That is a good start. And there are questions that go along with this. We're going to use this. I'm going to have you simmer this in the back of your mind. Todd recommends going with the field of play that's causing you the most frustration, anger, or heartache. So when we use coach, not saying like that's your source of those things, what within coaching is your greatest frustration, angst, or heartache? It's the one where building an alter ego is going to make a monumental impact on your life. So we're going to use that coaching and dig underneath that. Okay.
Okay.
The next section is what do you want or don't want? So I'm skipping way around the book to make this linear. So skipping ahead, we're going to ask some questions about what Jake wants or doesn't want out of this. And as I flip to the right page to get the right question. Here we go. So the question people are most challenged with answering, what do I want? So we got to look at the end in mind of a coach. So you're a coach. You have a clear idea of what you're aiming at. So is there anything you want or even you don't want out of coaching?
I want to leave a lasting impact on kids far beyond the sport that I'm coaching. And I want their parents and families to have perspective of that.
All right. I got those written down. I'm taking notes so I can publish this later. Is there anything that you don't want? So let me give you some examples. Now, this is for a personal one for more of a player, but I'll read some of there's only a few here. It says this particular individual couldn't think of what they did want. That was very hard to unpack for them. It says, what do you don't want? And he immediately said, I don't want to worry about rejection anymore. I don't want to worry about what my boss will say if I don't hit my numbers. I don't want to wake up dreading my day anymore. I don't want to feel like I'm wasting my days anymore. Admitting what you want, that you want something isn't egotistical, it's honest. So don't be afraid, to ask for what you want. So is there anything else that you personally want? So I heard you do want to make a lasting impact. I resonate with that. And you obviously want to use your strength of perspective to see the bigger picture. Is there anything that drives you bonkers? Remember the previous question was, I'm losing it right now, is things that make you really frustrated. So let me actually get back to that. I want to go to it on the right page, because that'll help prime you. This is the spot we want it for don't want. Is there anything that really frustrates you, heartache, anger, that something you don't want?
Parents yelling at kids, telling them what to do every second of every game. Something that gives me tremendous amount of angst and frustration. What I don't want, drives me nuts, how coaches and players and parents treat referees or treat each other. I think is becoming a joke in youth sports, a very, very sad and dark joke.
Good start. Okay. So we have the things that you want, lasting impact. We have the parents and families giving perspective, no yelling at kids, no referee nonsense, and treating each other actually. I think, without going down a rabbit hole, certain things bring out the worst in us, and it appears we're moving in a direction that sports truly bring out the worst in people, and also the best. It's very at both ends of the extreme. We get the best and best of times, the worst of times. It's like a Charles Dickens story. So we figured out, I want to actually move to the emotions just to see if there's anything there to cover our bases. So the emotional 4. And these are ones that you don't have to have pinned down, but it's interesting to consider. So for your alter ego, and this is where I give Jake the pass. If I was coaching him, we wouldn't obviously be live and sharing this with a bunch of people. But what I want to say is that a lot of alter ego development is based on emotions. So Todd believes that emotions drive our actions and that a lot of our purpose is personal. So I'm going to ask you, you can choose to give me an example or a story if you want. We won't dig into it. We can probably infer, but there are 4 common emotional drivers that show up in comics and heroic tales. So here they are. Number 1 is trauma. So like Batman, his parents were killed, and then he fought for justice and, Okay. So we understand that. The second one is destiny. And this was like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She was the chosen one. She rejected and she decided to embrace that. I would say similar to LeBron, where he was the chosen one, with kind of self-dub. But when you look like LeBron and you've earned that title to some extent and delivered, I would say that would be destiny. The third one was altruism. The example of Wonder Woman, she's going to save humanity for the reason of just saving humanity, helping. Cordrad wanted to help her serve others because they are forgotten or because they have a great love for them. And then the fourth is self-expression. So it's this seeking system. Like you just want to see what's possible. I wonder what I can do, create, find. And it's a lot of times a combination of them. So I'm going to ask you, Jake, without, story or no story, are there any of those emotional drivers, trauma, destiny, altruism, or self-expression that resonate with you?
I would say altruism would be first. Just having a desire to help people. I would say, what was the fourth one again?
Just self-expression. You want to know what's possible. So it's kind of that adventure, wanting to answer the question, I wonder what I could do. I wonder what I could create. I wonder what I can find. What's on the other side there?
Yeah, I'm having a tough time deciding what would be next between trauma and that.
So Ty?
Because I see them both competing in my head. I think not just self-feeling of trauma. I think more so the trauma aspect comes from seeing it in others, seeing it in other kids dealing with parents yelling at them, seeing coaches be ridiculous. Like I've witnessed a lot of trauma, what I would deem as trauma in youth sports. And so that's definitely a motivating factor of not wanting to be that. But there's absolutely the creative side of me that's like, oh, I wonder what is the most interesting way I could do this.
Yeah.
I like to do things out of the box. So I think because it's more prominent, I would say trauma is probably second to that.
And
or actually, maybe if I think about it, really, it's trauma and then it's altruism, seeing the trauma and then wanting to step in and help.
So the three answers here were ABC. It's righting a wrong, sticking it to the man, or showing someone who slighted you can't be stopped. And it sounds like it's righting a wrong in your case.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we had unlimited time and Jake was paying me a whole bunch of money to guide him through the alter ego effect, we would unpack that. We would look at what would be the primary emotion there and dig deep into that, because emotions move us, right? They drive our actions. And motivation is a moving cause in Latin, because everybody feels fancy with Latin. But we want to dig into that feeling. Then that would be the thing that would help us move, because purpose and emotion are intimately entwined. For our purposes, we've identified things he wants, things he doesn't want, and what is driving him. So we're kind of going to that center first, and then we work to the bubble outward, if that makes sense. Anything else you want to add on those? I don't want to skip over it if you don't want to, but kind of going.
I mean, I think there's an overarching thing that you just touched on that's huge, especially when it comes to men, that emotion drives purpose. So when you eliminate or try to drive out emotion from young men, you're removing purpose from them.
Yep.
So think of that as a coach, right? Suck it up. And you can think of all the things that I've heard say,
Oh yeah.
Take your skirt off. What are you doing? Things of that nature. And what you are doing is you are beating the emotion out of young men. And if you want to know why we have young men who sit and play video games for hours and hours and hours, who let's be real here, there are plenty of castles to storm in today's day and age, and you have men that really aren't storming any of the castles because they're just kind of blah, blah. Well, that's because we've beat the emotion out of them.
Well, and Todd mentions this, and I won't be able to find it off the top of my head. I don't memorize books in a week. Is he uses any emotion that's there. We think of anger and rage as negative. Emotions are information. And if there's energy there, there's energy there. And it's how we use the emotion that is really the ultimate definer. Young, angry, rageful, or vengeful men is not necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think, wars were won and people stopped the bad guys, right? Fought for a cause. So I agree with you. So, in the quote that I'm staring at, it says emotion is what is what's going to get you, number one, moving, and number two, keep you moving. So to turn off the spigot arbitrarily because it's not a societally approved emotion, it's take that energy and just redirect it that way. So that's kind of what this process does is it uncovers there. Because who am I? Who am I to say it's wrong to be pissed off about something? You should be pissed off. If that's what comes out of you because of something that was unfair, like Batman, then great. Use that. I don't know who made the rules for this kind of stuff. It's no, it's okay to feel this way, but not that way. It's no, that person feels that. Okay. Who am I to say? And that's what Todd says, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think I get it. We are afraid of things like anger and frustration because they can lead to poor actions or detrimental actions.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't let people experience those, they're never going to figure out how to control them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we have too many people who can't control their emotions because they're never really allowed to feel them. And so when they feel them, it just eventually boils up and gets to the point where they can't bury it or drive it down far enough. And then it comes out in inappropriate ways. Like, oh, what happened? What'd you do that for? There is, I think at some point in this, we need to do probably a good conversation on just emotional intelligence and emotional experiences, because it's a big thing out there that coaches really have yet to fully explore for the most part, right? Certainly not your everyday youth coaches. They're not going in and thinking about the emotion of their players. but it's something that needs to be thought about.
Yeah, and it's down the road. So we have condition up and towards the middle. Ability may get to the top, but character keeps you there. Mental, moral, and physical. So might appear there. And then also is poise. Be yourself. Don't be thrown off by events, whether good or bad. I think that's emotional intelligence, pre-emotional intelligence. So that'd be a good spot. Let's move to the whys and the wall. So the first is the whys. I'm going to cherry pick one. And if it goes to a dead end, we don't need whys. And the 5 whys technique is you ask why. It comes from Toyota. And you dig down to the real root issue of something. So play along with me. This is not an easy exercise. So to be fair to Jake, to do this, I'm a internal written processor. So like for me to do this exercise live would be painful. So that's why Jake's going, because he's better at this than I am. But sometimes you do need the space to think about it. To be put on the spot is very hard, especially when you're digging underneath things that aren't exactly just top of mind, tip of tongue. So Jake, we're going to go with the whys, and then we'll look at the wall as well. So the whys is, why do you want to have a lasting impact? What about what is why lasting impact? What is there about that as a coach? Because
I would say that's what we're all called to do. We're all called to leave a legacy to improve the lives of the people behind us. It was last week or 2 weeks ago, we talked about standing on the shoulders of giants, right? I am where I am because men left a legacy for me to stand on. I want to just simply be a part of that. I feel like that's my duty as simple mankind to do that for those after me, starting first and foremost with my children, but then going on to others. And I feel like there are plenty of situations where that gap is being left. So for whatever reason, it has found me to feel the need to fill that gap.
No, I'm going to leave that because that was really good for our first answer. Usually it takes a few whys to get there. So I could theoretically, as a coach in another thing, ask him, why is there a gap? Why do you even feel the need to leave a legacy? Well, okay, let's pin that down. Okay, so who or what, or why did you get that feeling? Why did you get that? Where did that come from? So like there are questions underneath here that we'd be drilling. So the thing I want, and now he's obviously got his perspective hat on and he's using his strengths at the moment. But the point of this exercise is like drilling for oil. You keep asking. I don't have to ask very long with Jake until you discover a gusher of emotion. Now, I'm not going to do that at this stage, but you'll know it when you hit it because the emotion there will be strong. Now, he's very composed. He's using those kind of strengths of the head in the middle, not the humor at this point. He has that oomph behind it. Like you can hear I have my feet in the sand. I've thought about this and I'm going to be doing this moving forward. And sometimes it takes a couple of questions to get to that inner why. Good point. Anything else you want to add on the whys before I move to the wall?
No, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. The wall is a little bit different. And this could be an either or. It's a psychological trick, but it's looking at third person point of view. So we can self-distance. So we're looking at Jake up there leaving a legacy. And the quote is from one University Minnesota professor and another one. It is also possible for people to take a step back when thinking about past experiences and reason from them from the perspective of the distance observer akin to a fly on the wall. So I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to call you a name just for fun. This would be the other portion of this exercise, and either of them work. So we would step back and phrase it third person point of view and say, why does Coach Jake want to leave a lasting impact or legacy behind? Or what's the purpose of Jake's coaching? So that would be another angle at this. I'm not actually asking you to answer, but we would step back instead of saying you answering it, we'd be the whys. We would look at it from a third person language to get that observer effect. kind of the WWJD concept of what would Wonder Woman do? How would Mother Teresa respond? Why is Batman going to finish this hard project? So that is another way to attack this. And I think we've already covered that. So just know that those are two techniques to move in there. This next section is about superpowers and or alter ego. So you get to choose, Jake. Do you want to move to your coaching superpowers next, or do you want to start thinking of the character, the thing that is going to be your Coach Prime version?
Let's go alter ego.
Let's go straight to alter ego. Now, before we do that, I want to pause for me, and I want Jake to talk about 1 to 2 of his top superheroes. So people he looks up to. So it doesn't have to be a superhero, Jake. But okay. We've done this before in the secret identities section, but I want people who didn't see that yet. What were some people that you look up to in the sporting world and or a superhero? And let's do 1 to 2 and see what you get with. Just before we start naming, who are some people that you resonate with, just to start with?
Like, are we taking fictional superhero here, or are we talking real life person? Either or?
Both.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Person I looked up to in the sporting world, Kevin Garnett definitely would be top of the list, because he was the guy that I got to watch all the time, being a Minnesota kid, and was kind of the first big athlete that came through town in my growing of age. Fictional superhero that I loved. I feel like Superman is just a cheat answer, to which all the Batman fans are rolling their eyes. But I would maybe I go super villain here and I say the Riddler. Like, for me, when I look at my strengths, I always think of the Riddler.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's the first name that pops into my head, not Superman. But I feel like Superman's cheating.
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's pretty common. Batman's, a lot of these characters are enduring for a lot of people, but how you resonate with them might be a lot different than others. So hit me with them again as a review.
Okay, so Kevin Garnett in the athletic world.
Yep.
And then, okay, we'll say Superman.
Okay. I want to keep the Riddler just for contrast's sake.
Totally fair.
Okay, totally fair. I like this. So the naming concept. Now, there's no wrong way to do this. I could have went the route of superpowers, so the traits he wants to exemplify in his coaching. Because now we're just designing for that field of play. I'm not doing the athlete. We're looking at, okay, we have these people that he looks up to. We're going to just stay in that arena. And Todd does a good job. This is why if you go on the alteregoeffect.com website, they have resources, a companion guide, a whole list of qualities and adjectives that are there that you can identify and be very specific. Because it's really hard to come up with these traits off the top of your head. Like, Jake's doing a great job. If you have this list of, 100 some words, these 5 to 10 character traits, a lot easier to pick from. So naming your alter ego. So why do we name our alter ego? So this is important. For the very reason we name the enemy. Names give us a shape and form of something, the book says. A name encompasses all the superpowers and traits and gives your alter ego a real identity. Okay? So same ones as those characters we mentioned in the first draft. So here's what we're going to do. We have some ways to do this. The first one we have is the first thing we need an emotional connection to it. Then we need to connect it to the superpowers, and we could combine it. And then we need to give it some kind of title. So a title, we could, simply give the alter ego the name of an animal or object, a fictional name, superhero or character. There aren't any rules to this, so you just pick a name and start running with it. So in your case, Jake, you have a coach. You could include coach in the name, like Coach Prime. So it combines the prime time with the coach title. You can work with the Superman, KG. KG's alter ego was who? Or what was his nickname?
The Kid.
And Oh man, do I'm this, wasn't he called the big ticket?
Oh yeah, sorry, you're right.
Yeah, there you go.
Big ticket. Mm-hmm.
So we have in Superman, he had Clark Kent, but Superman was Clark Kent was actually the alter ego, not Superman, because he actually transformed to be a regular person. Remind me of the Riddler again. What were the traits that you liked about the Riddler?
The attempted humor, and always asking questions to puzzle people.
All right. Now this is not in the book, but one thing I want to highlight is the emotional resonance. It comes up again and again that there's just something about that character that resonates with me. And since there are no rules, you can mix and match. So I'm going to ask you a very unfair question just to try out. Is if I had a little bit more experience or did a lot more of these, I would be able to go quicker. But for these three, let's scale your emotional resonance. How much do you relate on a scale of 1 to 10 to this character, their traits, and their story without actually identifying that? So what do you got? Let's go KG, the big ticket. How much do you resonate with that?
Not very much. Like a 3.
Okay. But you admire that.
I admire it, yes.
How about Superman?
Uh, 10.
Okay. Which portion? What's the emotional pull for you?
The virtue. His virtue and his morality with all of the tools to pull off immorality.
It's like a paradox.
Yep.
I like that. And it fits the next one. Now, how about the Riddler? There feels, if this is not a 9 or 10, I'd be very surprised.
No, it's a 10.
Okay. So because you have two competing things here. You have the lasting impact and the perspective you're trying to give, and that puzzles you because you don't want these three things. So this play, are they in the same universe, Superman and the Riddler?
Yeah, that's DC.
That's DC. So what we would do here is we can work with that and create a name first, because that's the route we're going. And then we would pull what specific traits, those 3 to 5 traits, superpowers, your particular alter ego has. So without us pulling up ChatGPT and actually using our brains, how might we, if just for playfulness sake, combine the Riddler and Superman and coaching into one? So like, let me give you some examples because it helps. And I do want to preface this, if anybody's going to do this, all alter egos sound corny.
Kevin Riddleman.
The what?
Kevin Riddleman.
Evan Riddleman?
Kevin Riddleman.
Kevin Riddleman. Speak more to that. You kind of you figured it out before I even got to the punchline. Okay.
It's something that is funny in my head. There's probably a Kevin Riddleman listening, thinking, "What the heck? Why is he laughing at my name?"
Kevin or Heaven?
No, yeah. Not Heaven. Kevin.
What? You're gonna take on that.
Kevin Garnett.
Oh,
the Riddler and Superman. Kevin Riddleman is my alter ego.
I like it. Okay, because I inserted myself into that for a second. I'm like, what the heck is he doing?
No, I'm not talking about you, pal.
I got it. That's good. So that is an example of combining. So Buddha Man, Napoleon Patton, Aldo, like Messi, Ronaldo, Grandma Bear, Sonic Bond. You didn't take but the Black Mamba, Carrie the Lion Herman, Keith the Great White Krantz, Dwayne the Rock Johnson, Incredible Baller, Sally Winfrey, Winston Marshall. So there's so let's work with this. Okay, now I'm going to go backwards to the superpowers. So this was that other section, and the superpowers is the question. So I'm going to go back to the question, and we'll fill this out. So on page 133 of my book is who or what does Kevin Riddleman represent? So what specific traits, superpowers, does this alter ego have in the coaching context?
Deeply cares.
Okay.
Virtuous. And I want to say questions everything, but I don't know if that's what I'm really trying to get after here. I mean, I suppose for the sake of the exercise, we could just say questions everything. Yeah, that one's a little bit more tougher. More tough, or tougher, more tougher.
The words that's they say are always curious over furious is one that gets thrown around. What's an adjective? It's like the first one is you're looking for adjectives. How do you want your alter ego to show up during your moment of impact? Who or what represents the adjectives you selected? So let's just write that down. Is the questioning, and we'll use that in a positive connotation just for now.
Yeah, curious would be fine.
Reminds me of like Socratic, like you're just Socratic.
Yeah.
You know, and that's an adjective on the list, but it is an adjective. I'm going to skip this section on your core drivers, what you're for or against. I think we've covered what you're for and what you're against in that initial, and there's some looping that happens throughout this, where you get to define your traits. But I do want to name your enemy. So your enemy, the hidden forces. I will cover the enemy clincher here after I do the hidden forces, because I think the hidden forces give us a list that we can work with. If I can read my notes on page 76. So I would like to ask, so we have this Kevin Riddleman character.
Makes me laugh every time.
Hidden forces. Which one does it struggle with most? So when you're coaching and this is about to show up, these are kind of the bad guys in Jane McGonigal's super better lingo that keep you from being loyal and true to yourself. So I'll read the three and we'll identify that, and then we'll name your actual enemy. The three are, number one is imposter syndrome. So you struggle with a narrative in your ear that spins a story. It causes you to dismiss your skills and capabilities. You say, oh, I was just in the right place at the right time, or, oh, anybody can do this. So imposter syndrome is number one. Number two is personal trauma. So you have your own, things that you deal with and you struggle to overcome, or the tribal narratives. This is one that takes a little unpacking. So it's the deeper things you connect yourself to and the unconscious beliefs you've adopted because of prevailing narratives. It creates beliefs about who is worthy to achieve something. So if you grew up in a family narrative that said Hermans don't have money, Todd Herman or the Hermans are average people, it's the thought and belief that would impact your behavior, your performance, and the ideas of what's possible. So if there was a hidden force that's lurking on your alter ego, would any of those relate to you?
I would say imposter syndrome.
Okay.
I would say one of my, this is going to sound bad, but it's almost a level of too much humility, right? Of like not, because humility has been preached to me for so long, so strongly, that you have a tendency not to feel worthy of the mission that you're called to do, or like, no, I couldn't do that. Like I'm not amazing enough to do that, I think would be the way to put it.
Say it again.
I'm not amazing enough to do that.
What's this called in Scandinavian countries? Is it tall poppy syndrome? I think that's right.
I have no idea.
We should look that up. But that is a tall poppy. So this is a common tale for those who want more. Like there is a generational recipe for who your family and family members, friends, you know, where you live, where you grow up. And to break out of that, you know, the enemy would tell you things like this. The one direction I thought you were going was like, nobody can be that good kind of thing, right? Like as virtuous as Superman, like you must have a hidden agenda is what I thought you were going to lead to.
No,
like,
I think somebody could be that good, and I would even venture to say I could be that good.
Mm-hmm.
But I would almost feel bad being that good because I feel like it would be. There's a part of me that feels egotistical in thinking that or saying that or behaving in that way.
Mm-hmm.
That scares me from performing in that way or being that way.
And this is where another round of coaching in another context would work. So we're going to actually name this enemy. So imposter syndrome, naming your enemy is the same thing as naming your own character. So the more something remains in the shadows, in the dark, unseen and untouched, the scarier it becomes. So when you bring it to the light, it's good. So we want to name this enemy. As soon as you give something a name, you give it an identity, a form, a shape, a structure, and something to battle against, and something to even have a conversation with. So it allows you to create this personality. So you already have your alter ego, but what is the imposter syndrome of this? So what's the one that's talking in your ear and that sometimes drags you into your ordinary world where you're less than amazing? So if we can identify what would be this enemy, and it doesn't have to be necessarily a name. Again, there's no rules with this. I suppose I could give you a couple examples like wolf, crystal ball. There's some in here that they actually name it after villains. Some named it. Remember what was the movie where it was with the Jennifer Aniston movie and like she named something like a swear word? It was Devlin, something like Devlin.
Oh,
do you remember that?
Yes, just go with it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, you know, Igor was this one for this particular tennis player who got bullied by all the boys growing up, and it became the label she placed on the forces the enemy would use to try and trap her. Sometimes it's just a name that goes with it. How would you label or identify this enemy of your alter ego? What would that be?
Yeah, okay. I got something, but I gotta formulate it in a way that will connect with me.
Well, attach it to
Wheaties.
Say it again.
Wheaties.
Oh, tell me more about this, because I think I know where you're going. So, and then I'm going to ask you a specific question. But okay, tell me about Wheaties. Why Wheaties? Why is Wheaties the enemy?
Going with this? I do. Amazed. Okay, so in the Bible, Jesus gives.
I'm done.
Okay, and this is probably pretty well known, I think, amongst most people, even non-Christians. He gives a story about the wheat and the tares, right, and the difference between the two of them. But there's an aspect to that story that goes unnoticed, right? You can tell a wheat and a tare are very similar, but when they come to full fruit, the difference is a wheat will actually bend over from the fruit that is produced. So in the grain that it's producing, it weighs over the top of the plant so that it starts bending over, where a tare doesn't produce fruit that causes it to bend, but causes fruit that just keeps it straight up. Okay. So if we take that into the pride versus humility, okay, the fruit that we produce should produce humility. My mind, it's backwards. My mind says that when we produce fruit and people see it, it creates this aura of haughtiness, of pride, of ego. But our fruit should actually produce humility. There is a way for our fruit to produce humility. And if this is what we're getting at, is me leaving a legacy, that's fruit being left behind for others.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I'm concerned that that fruit is going to produce pride instead of humility. So it puts my problem into the perspective that I've created in my head, that there is a solution to this.
And it could. So to honor your emotion, it could. Like your fear is it would ruin your head. Not that it would. It's just that it could. And so it talks about that there's this conflict. You know, you can make your enemy fierce, scary, intense. Anything goes here. What I do want to ask is, if I ask you to feel it somatically and you think of that, so like it coming to fruition. When you think of Wheaties, what is the prevailing emotion there? What is the resonance it feels? You don't have to accurately label. I'm not going to be your EQ, gatekeeper here. But when you feel that you're losing to that enemy, what does that feel like?
I hate myself.
So, because when I think of hate, I think of anger and rage. Like,
sure.
So how are you interpreting that word? Like, what does it make you like? I can see this talking to you.
Anger, frustration. I think it boils down into sadness, I think, is what it ends up boiling into. But that's more of a later emotion than a initial emotion. But yeah, anger, frustration into sadness.
I would suffice to say it would end in regret.
Could
you imagine leaving less fruit behind than you could have?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the conversation comes out, and we're gonna come back to this with the ground punch, where we need to have the ability to talk to your enemy. So when you are in your alter ego and your enemy inevitably talks to you like, oh, hey, you're doing this, you need to have the ability to kick them out to the curb is one, or have Todd calls it like a kind of like a prepared speech. And I think that will be useful, but I'll save that. Well played. This is good. This is working. I did not expect you to go there. I was thinking like Wheaties is common, and like I actually thought Wheaties. Nonetheless, let's move to a totem. And I know this is a little bit of a hard turn, but it made sense to do the alter ego and the enemy next to each other with the hidden force. Let's move to your totem. Now, a totem is something that is a part of enclothed cognition. So you take on the white lab coat and you become more like a doctor or an artist mock or this. So the clothes and the things we wear have symbolic meaning. Now, the Kellogg School of Management said, if your attention did not increase when the coat was not worn or was not associated with a painter. So you need to have an accurate association of the object or the thing to something. So attention only increased when the coat was A, worn, and B, associated with the doctor. The influence of clothes or a totem depends on wearing them and knowing their symbolic meaning. So the goal here is to having some sort of igniting object or thing or context that allows you to transform. So it's your phone booth, Jake. If you're familiar with Green Lantern, the ring, puts on the ring, becomes Green Lantern. Todd likes to imagine that your alter ego, this Kevin Riddleman, lives within inside that. And when you take it on, then you transform. So it can be any object that can hold meaning and acts as a symbol for your character that you can easily activate. So moving forward, and I'll say that it embodies your alter ego superpowers. So you said deeply cares, virtuous, Socratic. It aligns with the origin story, the mission. When it's activated, it calls forth your self. The more you emotionally attach to this thing, the better. But it doesn't have to be anything too crazy. So it could be just an army uniform. It could be the this, could be the that. So is there any object that you can feel, smell, taste, touch, or see that would be of use to use? The three that you have to choose from are something you wear, okay? Be some big or small. Something you carry with you, so like an object. So some people have, I don't know, like a rock or something. Number 3 is something connected to your field of play. So like a football field, a stage, a writing chair, a boardroom. So it's like that generic context. So does anything come to mind that symbolizes something to you?
I think the uniform one could certainly be a possibility because you're switching into specific gear typically when you go to coach. For the sake of the play of this, I'm going to say cones, and I'm going to call them magic rings, right? But every practice or every game, I'm laying out cones for the practice, for the activity that I always carry around with me. So for me, as I go to set up my practice and I take out my magic rings and I start to play, throw out my magic rings, it's the trigger for me to jump into Kevin Riddleman. It is Kevin Riddleman who lays down the magic rings to defeat the Wheaties.
Oh, I got, yeah, okay. You ran so much quicker on that I, I'm slower of a processor than Jake. It takes me a long time.
I got a whole narrative behind it already.
Okay, well, we will save the origin story for off the air and say that these cones are the thing. And it could be something where you could transform that as you go. So like you could start with that, or you could have some sort of necklace with a cone on it, or a bracelet, or he even holds one in his pocket. So there are options. This is what I wanted to illuminate to people.
No, I'm just going to walk around with a cone everywhere I go.
That'd be actually really funny. You can even speak through it like a megaphone.
This is my cone. It is a magic ring.
Yeah. Well, that is more or less the section. So we went all the way from the beginning to no alter ego, no totem, no anything. He would then activate that at a specific time. He obviously jumped ahead and was able to activate that in that initial moment. Let's finish off, Jay, because we're going to go quick. Let's do the rapid fire ending section with pick and preach. I will give the metaphors, most valuable ideas, and then the goosh, so something to run with, and then we'll wrap. Sound good?
Groovy.
You're a champ. That went absolutely smoothly. So the metaphors. So what is loyalty like in terms of an alter ego? There are 3 that came up. Jake, you can pick one that you like of these 3, or give me another one if you can think of one. Is an alter ego is like a compass, tells you which direction to go to live with intentionality. It is also resonate with a shield because it blocks the arrows or the thoughts or the emotions of Wheaties or whatever your enemy is. So it's a shield. And it's also a doorway. So there are multiple routes to your most authentic and heroic self. And all of the strategies we use today were doorways to that. So do you have any of those you like more than the others, or maybe another one that comes up in terms of loyalty and an alter ego?
I would say discipline to yourself and to your idea of who the best you is, right? It creates a tangible way to tap into you, right? Like that's what connected me with the cones, right? It's a discipline. Every time I put down those cones, which is a discipline I have to do every time anyways, it's already built in. It's now connecting me to that person that I know I can be and know I should be every time. So I would an alter ego is a discipline to be true to yourself.
Oh, I got to write that down. You're good. Oh, that was really the pun. It's like gauntlet. All right, this one. True. Got it. Well, but I personally like, it's a toss-up for me. I like that, by the way, the discipline. Between the shield and the compass. In terms of one's more of a offensive, one's more of a defensive. I'm going to go with the defensive at this point because I think a lot of the times it's, as we come up with these, if it's not childish, this has been very, very validated across a lot of people. And so I think it really allows us to show up and be at ourselves. So it's a shield. I like that one.
If of those three, I like the compass the best.
Okay. I agree. I agree with that.
More sense in my head.
All right. Most valuable ideas. You can riff on any or all of these from our context. So the athlete is the first, is get emotional and get imaginative. So emotions drive our actions. Using those emotions, because purpose is personal. It gets you moving. It keeps you going. Is something that I think we really should leverage, as you said earlier. So it's like you saw my notes. And then also get imaginative. This is fun. Like, it doesn't have to be super serious. Jake was unbelievably transparent and brave to go forward with an alter ego in front of people. A lot of times this is kept secret. We use it as illustrative of the book. So I'm thankful that he chose that. But if you're a teammate, you're a coach, wherever, get imaginative and start to bring that out. The more creative you are with this process, the better. So if there's deep emotion and resonance with that character, with that story, you are going to play with more emotion in a good way, resonance and authenticity and loyalty to yourself. And I think that's what we were after when we were studying this. For coaches, this one was a little tougher because there wasn't as much specifically aimed at coaches. Like, well, do I look at it alter ego for a coach, or is it for my athletes? But the one I really wanted to highlight was find it. So find your alter ego, find your athlete's alter ego. What does it look like compass wise at their best? Expect it. So once you identify it, expect them to bring their truest, most heroic self or nothing else. And then reset it. This is the one that I couldn't let go, was the reset button. I'm going to read it. I mentioned in the chapter on totems and artifacts, and it's worth repeating. When you slip, reset. This means taking off your glasses and putting them back on, putting down your pen and picking it back up, removing the ring and placing it back on, pulling the pebble out of your pocket and placing it back in again, putting the cones down and picking them back up. So it's not if your athletes are going to fall out of character, out of ego, it's when, and teaching them to reduce that lag time. The enemy gets through, something bad happens. Even if you have an alter ego, you're still going to face adversity. So the ability to reset and then go back again is something that I found interesting for coaches, even for yourself. If I saw a post the other day, it's like it was Coach Prime and then Phil Jackson. Like, if the general doesn't freak out, neither do the troops. So the ability for you to reset and your athletes to reset. For the parent, I think it's really the right lock, the right key, the right self at the right time. So you remember the kernel I mentioned? I want to tie that bow. So that kernel was able to create an alter ego, very similar to, let's see if I have the right page number. I do, 189. He was able to become his dad's self, and he loved Mike Rowe, the self-deprecating humor, approachable, funny, and he started wearing a baseball hat backwards. So know that uniform, that dad self, that parent self uniform, you have to have the right lock and the right key, the right self at the right time. Who you are during your day is not necessarily the self that needs to show up when you get home. And taking that time to activate that next self. And this is one I struggle with. Like, the things that make me good here or in other places are not the ones that make me good out there. And that's one that I would want to take away most, is getting those right traits at the right time. Similar to that tennis player. Last one is overall is the real you. So this is one that came up early in the book, but it stood out very stark. It says, this is not about being fake. Pretending to know about particle physics when you don't is fake. Using an alter ego to entertain a group of physics students when you have a boring physics professor and until now is just bringing the right tools to the job. Now, here's the most important point of the book, so pay attention. From an observer's perspective, who is the real you? When you feel and you're giving a speech and you're anxious and you're not really sure, do people really see that? Or are we judged by what we do, not by what we think we intend to do? So here's the point. If you show up for a speech incredibly nervous, but everyone in the audience experiences you as confident, articulate, and funny, or in Jake's case, virtuous, Socratic, what was the other one? I put it away. But if they experience it, does it really matter to them if you showed up as an alter ego in order to give them the experience and yourself the reward? No. At the end of the day, Todd or I care about how people perform. Similar to that, your alter ego is the truest version of yourself. Okay. And then finally, along with that, it is the real you. So on 230, 231, he talks really about that you will not regret at the end of your life anything if you take these actions as your alter ego. You'll be judged by how you showed up, what you did, what you said, how you acted, and whether you performed. So that would be my overall. So we have the emotional for the athletes, expecting and resetting for the coach, right rock and key, right self, right time for the parent, and your alter ego being the real you for loyalty. Any favorites there, Jake, that you liked?
I mean, the emotional one is huge. That's definitely a favorite of mine that I think needs to be explored further. Just a general idea. We haven't put it this way, but when you talk about the story of the colonel, the power of a uniform, man, there's a power of a uniform, right? It made me think of Remember the Titans. Yeah. When Coach Boone says, but when you put that uniform on, that Titan uniform on, and he's pointing at his chest.
Yeah.
Right. Like there was a meaning behind it. You now are expected to be a greater you. And I think there's so much power in it. I mean, we talk about a token or the totem. I think a uniform is the most tangible way to do that. And I think especially in the parent world, man, in the dad world, you know, we're dealing with stresses at work. Mom world, we're dealing with stresses at work. Kids don't want that. They don't deserve that. And so it's amazing how much just changing your shirt can affect your mindset. And especially if we are now aware and conscious of that. Yeah, dad shirt's on now. All of that's gone. You know, I think what always drew me to athletics, especially soccer, is that when I stepped on the field, everything outside of the field disappeared. Yeah. It did not matter. School didn't matter. Relationships, even outside of my teammates' relationships in that moment, didn't matter, right? All that mattered was the 2 goals in the ball, and that's it. And life became so simple. And I think there's ways to include that in other parts of our life as a parent or as a coach or as a player. That's really profound.
The totem, and one thing we didn't get to, and one thing I would really like to think more about is the totem for the parents. Like having a team totem for the parents, like to constantly remind, like everybody gets it out, and maybe it's something they wear, something that's held, maybe something that's worn, because I know shirts have different, like that's why I love Joe Madden so much, is he has those phrases for the team, like, you know, 9 equals 8 kind of thing, or whatever it was. He had all these different ones for each year, a different theme, and for not making that accidental, but making it intentional. Like you can have the parent be, everybody be respectful. Everybody has that. But to have the literal reminder and then holding ourselves to that standard is interesting.
Yeah. Like here's an idea, right? If you're a parent, find some item that reminds you that when you show up to a field, that you are still a life coach, but you are not a sport coach. That's it. That I think is the biggest ask of coaches. It's not that they don't want you involved or want you to disappear. You are their parent, right? But we want you to be the parent, not their coach. Let us do that in terms of athletic coach. And then just something to remind you, just whether it's a little pebble or, you know, something, it's just a little token of like, what's the point of me here? What's my role here right now? It's not to tell him how to pass a ball, throw a ball, nothing. My job is to make sure that he gives his best effort and that he's treating people the way he wants to be treated. Yep. And boom.
I like that. There's so much possibility here. To wrap up, 2 things that you can go do, 2 protocols that you can apply instantly are Tic Tacs and the coffee shop. And I knew Jake would like this. So Tic Tacs. Todd Herman would bring a box of Tic Tacs, and he'd have the label already torn off. And this is what he would say to a player. He says, before you go on the field, take one of these little pills and imagine it contains the superpower characteristics you want to activate. But don't just stop it in your mouth. I want you to pause for a moment and really be deliberate about who is going to show up on the field. Fast forward. This is the paragraph. I can't believe this. Fast forward to over 15 years later, and I've given out more than 30,000 Alter Ego X pills to help clients activate their heroic self. The placebo effect of taking a pill with no pharmaceutical qualities has been one of the most effective totems I've seen clients use. The most common response from people, and one someone recently shared, was, I feel like it works from the inside out, almost like it triggers a hidden power. So there is actually alteregoxpill.com. You can go check that out. But having like different Tic Tacs, like it eats like in your car, in your gym bag, like to just like, that's super easy but cool. Last one is the quest number 1 at the end of the book. Todd recommends you go as your alter ego and order a drink at like a coffee shop. So go into character. Now, the activating event would be a little hard with your cones, Jake. Having cones at a Caribou Coffee would be kind of funny. But you're going to go and you would be mindful of like, how would your alter ego hold, sip, and stand and sit? Would you enjoy it differently? Would you be noticing your surroundings, the people? How would you interact with people? And how would your alter ego be feeling? So between the Tic Tacs to activate and then the coffee shop challenge to just be in that character for a little bit, 2 really simple ways that you can practice, like Jake said, being loyal to yourself, that discipline. Because ordering a coffee at a coffee shop is nothing. It's very simple. So pretending or even embodying those traits, how would you behave? How would you look? How would you act? All of that is in the book. And it was a really fun read. I took a lot of notes on this one, so kind of ripped my heart out to cut so much, but for our purposes, I think we nailed it. So
yeah, I love it. I mean, just that last part made me think of so many things of, our true self. Well, who is our true self? A lot of our true self is disguised, it's hidden, it's beat up, it's bloodied and bruised by the trauma that we go through, right? And you've said the word trauma a handful of times.
Yep.
And so when we say that, enter into your alter ego, I think what we're truly getting at is you have an idea of your ideal self, right? And it's the idea that still remains despite all of the trauma and the life experience that has beat you into this idea that you can't be that person or you have to be someone else to survive.
Yep.
And just the practice of like that trigger, right? That TikTok of putting all that trauma aside, even if it's just for 5 minutes, and I'm going to be that ideal self that I want to be today. I think that's where we start with, right? And we just slowly build that up. To where that ideal self starts to come through more and more and more, and we start to be who we were meant to be, not what our trauma and our life experience has forced us or beat us into.
Yeah. And we're not going to play therapist, neither did Todd Herman. I agree with that wholeheartedly. It's like there's a quote, something about like the creative adult is just a child who survived. The heroic self is just the hero that was already there.
Yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly. So with that said, to wrap, I'll give Jake the final word as always. Thank you for learning with us. This is fun. This is going to be long form as it always is. We'll be working on chunking down the content so you can take away snippets as well. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let us know what you think about any of this, the totems, the teams, the saving Minnesota sports, all of that's good. Check out Todd Herman's. Yeah,
somebody save Minnesota sports.
Save us, save us. Check out Todd Herman's stuff, his website, his book, his resources. He has built out an incredible array of, I guess, doorways to his material. So take advantage of that. We are wrapping now our Be True to Yourself section, and we're going to be moving towards being true to those you lead. We have 3 options. We'll pick 2 between super fans, leaders eat last, and then the Trust Edge by Horsager, 2 of those 3. And we'll be diving into, okay, now how do you serve the people around you? How do you create the super fans? How do you be that servant leader? How do you build trust in that way? With that said, we're having a blast. Do check out the other episodes, those other buckets: industriousness, friendship, and enthusiasm. Like I said, we're halfway through loyalty before we finish up the final row, the bottom layer of cooperation. Jake, any final words on loyalty, alter ego, or just preaching about life?
No, I got nothing. I think I've dropped some good nuggets today, and so I'm just leaving that.
He's like, I'm done.
No, it's awesome. I think this section I was always looking forward to, and I was going to find it interesting because I think one of our strengths, both you and I, and also a weakness, is how loyal we are.
Yeah.
Oftentimes when I go into an interview or someone's like, "What's your greatest weakness?" I always start with, "I'm loyal to a fault. I've hurt myself more often than I care to admit because I was too loyal to something or someone." So I was going to find this one interesting, and so far it's been that.
We shall see. There's still more to go. So thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks. Bye.